Okay, so right now we're going to look at another one of our web exploit modules, and this one covers client-side login. Essentially, that's allowing a client-side JavaScript or whatever to control your access to your server to validate whether a password is correct. Always, this is a bad idea because client-side means that the client has to download the file or the JavaScript or whatever, and because of that, it's susceptible to analysis and cheating, hacking, that sort of thing. So client-side login is always a bad idea, and we're going to see why in this next puzzle. Okay, so here we are, Module 6, Client-Side Login. The puzzle takes advantage of client-side authentication, means using the script on the client computer to validate the login. As you might imagine, this is a terrible idea. Anything located on the client system is available to be reverse engineered and exploited. So the instructions are, go to the link, find the flag, and then click the Start Assignment button and do what you need to do to turn that in. I'm going to go ahead and go to Student View so that we can do a new attempt. As you can see, I've already done this probably several times. But anyway, the hint says client-side validation is terrible. Also, knowing how to encode and decode is a useful skill. So that should tell you right there, maybe there's something that needs to be encoded or decoded. So let's go to the site. And what we see here is basically just a regular login screen. We got a password and username box and then a submit button. So let's go ahead, put in, we're going to use admin and password because it's a good idea to go ahead and do that. Now I'm going to say, oops, says no, incorrect. So rule number 1 for web exploit hacking, the first thing you want to do is look at the source code. So we're going to view source code. And what we see up here is there is a style sheet and there is a JavaScript. Now we can tell that these are probably local to the server because there's not a long address like the style sheet. There's nothing about Bootstrap or anything like that in front of these. These are just local, which means they're local documents on the server, which means they're not probably third party. And so what we want to do is go ahead and look at the style sheet. Doesn't really matter because that's just making the style of the page. That just controls fonts and things like that. What matters is the JavaScript. So we want to look at the code for the JavaScript. And it has been sort of obfuscated. It's all crammed into one line. Obfuscation is an attempt to kind of hide what a code does by getting rid of white space and making it all one line and just generally making it hard to read the code. But still, the code can be read. So let's go ahead and see if there's anything that strikes us asynchronous. Basically, we're building in a event listener. Okay, we're loading a Windows event listener. And basically, we're going to use the query selector in the DOM, the document object model. We're going to do something with the form, and the event listener is for the submit button. So basically, the button, this is the device, or this is the code that handles the button click. We're listening for the event of the submit button being clicked, and we're checking the input. The first input, U, is the variable name, and that is the input for the username. And P, that's the little box that holds the password. So essentially what happens is when the submit button is clicked, this event fires, and U and P, which is the username variable and the password variable, are loaded up. So basically what they're doing is they're loading those into that. Now here's interesting. So if the username is not that, then returning incorrect username. So that right there tells me you should never put is not something. You should always put if it equals to something, then have an activity. What this tells me is that this right here, this string of text, is the username. And I'm going to bet you that since we have the same thing here, if this long string of text here is not the password, then we're going to say incorrect password. So we've got to figure out what this little piece of code does. What we're going to find is what this little piece of code does is it decodes, because this is obviously been encoded, and so is this. If you look at this string, now I can tell you it's not binary because it would be all ones and zeros. It's not ROT13 because there are numbers in there. See, like there's a number 8. That tells you right away it can't be ROT13 because there are numbers in there. ROT13 will never have numbers. It's just a text cipher, so it just moves the text over. It's also not hex because it doesn't look like hex at all. I'm going to bet that this string and this string are base 64 just because of the way they look. There are numbers in them, which tells me it's not ROT13. They're not ones and zeros, which tells me it's not binary. Those are the more common ones. And it's not hexadecimal because it doesn't look like hexadecimal. So I'm going to go ahead, first of all, I'm going to take the username. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to go to a base 64 decoder and see if I can figure out what that is. See if it decodes into anything useful. So I'm going to paste the text in, hit decode, and I get the word admin. So apparently that's useful. Okay, so we know that the username now is admin. Let's see what the password is. So I'm going to copy the password. I'm going to put it in the decoder. And look at that. There's our flag. PicoCTF. Never, 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 never. That is a good piece of advice. So what we can do, we can take this flag, and we're going to take it back here, and we're going to go start assignment. We're going to paste it in. We're going to hit submit assignment. And that is a good walkthrough for this assignment. That is how you would complete this assignment. To kind of summarize, what we did was, first of all, we looked at the source code, because that's always rule number one. We looked at the source code. When we looked at it, we found out that there were a local JavaScript and a local style sheet. It wasn't third party, didn't have a long address in the links up in the head of the HTML document. We didn't really care about the style sheet because that's just looks of the page, but we looked at the JavaScript, and we discovered that it was essentially basically a listener. It listened for the event, which the event is the button click to validate, and then it compared the two values of the password and username box to two hard-coded values, which is probably the most lazy and most awful way of encrypting or encoding a password ever. But they at least did encode it into base 64. They didn't just leave it as plain text. That would have been pretty ridiculous. You could have, in fact, left that as plain text, and it would have gone in, and it would have allowed you to do the same thing. But they at least encoded as base 64. And so what that JavaScript did was it took the two values from those two boxes, the username and password, and it decoded them, and it set them into a JavaScript to see, okay, is this variable equal to this value for the password and for the username? And if it was, then it lets you get in. But they used the flag as the password, so we didn't really even need to go and test if that was right, because we got the flag, and that is, in fact, what counts. So that is the way that you would complete the client-side login. What gave us the clues was, number one, the title of the challenge, client-side login. That tells me I need to look at the JavaScript. And number two, the hint talked about encoding and decoding, so I know I need to encode or decode something, and probably decode. And then number three, when I looked at it, I knew it didn't have any, I knew it had numbers in it, so it couldn't be ROT13. I knew it wasn't ones and zeros, so it couldn't be binary. It didn't look like hex. You'll get to where when you see someone that's taken text and encoded it to hexadecimal, it has a look to it. You start just the way that the coding looks. That was definitely base 64, and so That's all we had to do. Anyway, I hope this was helpful, and I hope you're having fun with this. If you have any questions, let me know, and I will see you in class.